Hey guys, it's Greg with Apple Explained, and in this video, we're going to discuss why Apple is such an easy company to hate. Because if you're a big Apple fan like I am, you've probably encountered a lot of people who despise the company, and sometimes their hatred is justified. But I thought it'd be interesting to investigate why it appears Apple receives more hate than any other tech company. Now, this video topic was the first place winner of last week's voting poll, and if you didn't get to vote, make sure you're subscribed. That way, the voting polls will show up right in your mobile activity feed, and you can let me know which video you'd like to see next. So ever since the early days of Apple, there's been a lot of negativity surrounding the company, and many criticisms from the 80s are still repeated today. For example, the original 128K Macintosh was ridiculed for its lack of internal and external expansion options, and Apple was criticized for not licensing the Macintosh operating system to other hardware manufacturers, both of which are things people still think are problems with today's Macs. So hatred toward Apple has only gotten worse as they've grown in popularity, and nowhere is it more apparent than on the internet. Even users on pro-Apple websites like Mac Rumors hate on the company at almost every turn. But why is this the case? Well, let's find out by going over some of the reasons why people hate Apple so much to begin with. And I think one of the biggest reasons is the fan base. Now, Apple has always had the most loyal, devoted users of any tech company in history, but that can hurt the brand just as much as it can help. Because although the majority of Apple users are decent people, there is a loud minority who use the brand as a status symbol or a reason to believe they're better than others who buy PCs or Android devices. And if you encounter enough of these obnoxious users, you'll probably be turned off from the Apple brand completely, since you've associated it with narcissists who use material objects to feel superior to others. Although I should mention that this behavior isn't exclusive to Apple users. You can easily find people in the PC community that arrogantly berate Apple users for the products they use. But I think the fan base is only the beginning, because Apple haters are quick to point out everything they believe is wrong with the company's products. And their number one complaint are the specs you get for the price you pay. And in most cases they're right, because if you compare something like this sub-$1,000 HP notebook to the most affordable $1,300 MacBook Pro, you could argue that the HP is a better value since you're not only getting a larger 15-inch display, but you're also getting 12GB of RAM rather than 8GB, and Apple haters compare specs in this way all the time. They'll say their smartphone has more RAM or a larger battery, in addition to being cheaper than an iPhone. But there's a flaw in this way of thinking, because notebooks and smartphones aren't just boxes of specs, they're products that people have to interact with and use. And I can guarantee that the MacBook Pro has a better trackpad, higher resolution display with better color accuracy, a faster solid-state drive, and better power efficiency than the HP. And it's been proven time and time again that higher specs doesn't mean a faster device, because you have to consider how efficient the operating system is at utilizing hardware. For example, the newest iPhones rarely have the best specs in the industry on paper, but it almost always has the fastest real-world performance, because Apple can tightly optimize the software to the hardware it runs on. And this also means better battery life than other less optimized smartphones. You also have to consider that most Apple users don't have any specialized knowledge in technology at all. They just want a smartphone or notebook that's easy to use and works how they expect. And I think this is another aspect of the Apple community that's easy to hate on, because some people think Apple products are dumbed down for dumb users, who are being taken advantage of by a money-hungry company selling underpowered products for a premium price. But again, you have to assign some value to a product being more user-friendly. And although you may not think Apple products are necessarily easier to use, other people might feel differently, and you have to respect their desire to be part of an ecosystem that's more accessible for them, just like Apple users need to respect people who prefer PCs or Android devices. And when it comes to the Apple ecosystem, I think there are aspects of it that some people hate, because it's not an accident that the ecosystem is commonly referred to as a walled garden, which means there are attractive things about it, but it comes with limitations that prevent users from leaving. For example, if you want an Apple Watch, you'll also need an iPhone since it doesn't work with anything else, whereas the Galaxy Gear Watch is compatible with the iPhone, although its capabilities are limited. And many people think Apple intentionally imposes these restrictions to lock down users and to keep them from switching to other platforms, and there is some truth to this, but Apple sees it a different way. They think because they're in charge of the entire ecosystem from end to end, they can offer customers a much more seamless and user-friendly experience, and I think there's truth to this also. And this philosophy is another reason why people despise Apple. Steve Jobs always said it was important for them to control the entire product, from the hardware to the software, and that approach can sound scary, since it removes consumer choice and forces users to deal with whatever changes Apple makes to their products. Because if you're entrenched in the Apple ecosystem but still need an iPhone with a headphone jack, you're out of luck unless you buy an older iPhone. And this is where some people have a problem, because the iPhone is the only smartphone that runs iOS, whereas Android users can choose from different devices that best suit their needs. And this leads us to the topic of Apple's culture and the guy who established it, Steve Jobs. There are a lot of people who hate Steve Jobs, so they hate Apple by extension. Now, the culture he instilled at Apple is the reason why so many of us are drawn to the company, but you have to admit that a lot of people are uncomfortable with it, because it might appear that Jobs is treated as a quasi-religious figure and that Apple's culture is the religion. And for people who are just shopping for a notebook, this level of devotion to a for-profit company may cause them to think twice about joining the community. But it's also worth noting that many people view Apple the same way Jobs viewed IBM back in the 80s, as a dominant tech company that's operating out of their own interests instead of the interests of their users. And because Apple has become so powerful and popular, some people simply want to be part of the rebellion, just to spite Apple users and prevent the company from growing even larger. Now, I want to address the internet Apple hate in more detail, because if you talk to people on the sidewalk about Apple, you likely won't encounter the same level of bitterness as people you find online. And I think this has to do with a common problem with the internet in general, which is the echo chamber effect. When you get a group of people with similar beliefs in the same location, they'll reinforce each other's opinions and therefore cause those beliefs to grow even stronger. And any dissenting viewpoints will quickly be stifled or dismissed without consideration. And this is especially true when it comes to Apple. For example, when the original iPad was released, it was endlessly ridiculed by the online tech community, who asserted that it was nothing more than an oversized iPod Touch, and that no one had a reason to buy it if they already had a notebook. But once people had a chance to actually use it, many understood its benefits, and the iPad went on to become one of Apple's best-selling products in history. And this online hatred toward Apple can be seen right here on YouTube, with people like Austin Evans and Lamar Wilson mentioning how many more negative comments they receive when reviewing Apple products compared to non-Apple products. So it's clear that when a community of people keep repeating this Apple hate mantra, they become intolerant to any other opinion, similar to what might happen among die-hard Apple fans who have nothing but positive things to say about the company. So when you put all of these elements together, it's easy to understand why some people hate Apple and have a hard time understanding why anyone would support them. Because from their perspective, Apple sheep have just been brainwashed by their tyrannical leader Steve Jobs, who indoctrinated them to pay more for an inferior product that simply serves as a status symbol. Because Apple products have less powerful components, they're less customizable, and they lock users into Apple's ecosystem. But the problem is that isn't how Apple fans look at it at all. We see Steve Jobs as a visionary who helped make technology accessible to everyday people, and we appreciate not only how easy it is to use Apple products, but that using them can actually be enjoyable. And that focus on user experience is why Apple is our favorite tech company. And this difference in priorities is essentially what it all comes down to. If you're a tech enthusiast who enjoys opening up your products to upgrade components or customizing advanced software features on your smartphone, then you'll probably be frustrated by the limitations of iPhones. But if you're a busy mom who just wants a smartphone that works simply and easily, then I'd argue there's no better device than an iPhone. So it really isn't a matter of what product is the best, but rather what product is the best for you. And while it's okay to be enthusiastic about products you love, it's not okay to judge others for the devices they use. So that is why Apple is so easy to hate, and if you want to vote for the next video topic, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.